that one right over the stratosphere. Is this the right angle? I'm not sure if she's
right
right
my
enough.
scope.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I gotta pull her line it.
Is that a Jim Hayes over there?
Yeah.
With the North Star.
You're gonna get
official
hazed
snubber?
over there?
When night falls, most people go indoors and turn on their lights, but an increasing number of people stay outside to enjoy the night sky.
A bright mic? Yeah, right.
You know what I should do? I should put it on lunar rate. How about that?
In the day, one brilliant star, our sun, dominates the sky. At night, thousands of individual stars are visible, and billions of fainter ones cast a hazy glow across our sky. Many people are interested in the night sky, but city dwellers are perhaps more interested than others because in the cities, light pollution is so bad few stars are visible. This prohibition on the night seems to whet their appetite to see and learn more about the elusive phenomena of a dark, starry sky. Urbanites rarely see more than a few hundred stars from their home. They must travel hundreds of kilometers away from the city lights to see a dark sky. From a dark site, the stars seem fixed in a great sphere that surrounds us, the celestial sphere, and that is what this program is about. Most people will never see a dark, star-filled sky, and those who do are rarely prepared to make the most of the occasion. This program will introduce the night sky so that your first foray into stargazing will not seem so daunting. To do this, we have preserved a record of the night sky on film. Even with modern electronic cameras, photographic film is still the best medium to record the faint and subtle details of the night sky. Our camera was set up at a dark site. Month after month for several years, it photographed the stars. A wide-angle lens allowed the sensitive film to record the grand design of the celestial sphere that is visible from a rural observing site. On average, we see less than half the sky during any one night. Daylight and our latitude cause this limited view of the celestial sphere. The apparent motion of our sun across the sky is caused by the rotation of the Earth, but we do not feel the Earth rotating, so it seems the celestial sphere is revolving above us. If a stargazer on Earth looks towards their southern horizon, this arrow is the direction they would be looking out into the sky. After sunset, the sky slowly darkens. Our stargazer sees a procession of stars as they rise up in the east and follow the sun below the western horizon. At about midnight, the sun is on the opposite side of the Earth, and our observer is looking directly away from the sun. The stars that were rising in the east at sunset are now high in the sky above the southern horizon. As our planet revolves, our stargazer is carried by its rotation towards the dawn at 1,800 kilometers per hour. Later at breakfast, our observer can reflect upon their long night's vigil. The celestial sphere rotates around the north and south celestial poles. These are simply the axis of the Earth projected onto the sky. The north pole of the celestial sphere is near the star Polaris. So unlike other stars, Polaris will not appear to move across the sky. The equator of the celestial sphere is the projection of the Earth's equator up onto the sky, splitting it into a northern and southern hemisphere. The celestial equator runs horizontally across the frame. If we observed from the Earth's north pole, the celestial sphere would be tipped forward, such that the stars south of the equator would be out of view below the horizon. If we traveled to the Earth's equator, the stars we now see would be higher in the sky and more southern stars would be visible. The rotation of the Earth carries us from dusk to dawn, showing us rich star fields and atmospheric phenomena. But it also shows the result of human activity. The lights of aircraft streak across our sky, and there is light pollution from distant towns and cities. About half the sky is hidden by daylight. To see the stars behind the glare of the sun, we must wait for the Earth's annual orbital motion to carry us around to the other side. Each day, this motion causes stars to rise almost 4 minutes earlier each night. After a month, they rise about 2 hours earlier than the previous month. So with patience, we can see around the celestial sphere in much less than a year of observing. Our film shortens this time by speeding up the motion of the stars across our sky and by combining filmed segments of the night from different times of the year. The celestial sphere shows us different aspects of itself at various times of the year. Each season has a set of stars that dominate the evening sky. Those stars have become associated with that season. One aspect is displayed in the evening across the summer sky from the southern horizon, overhead, and into the northeast. It's the mottled and irregular band of hazy light punctuated by countless numbers of faint stars. This is the Milky Way, our home galaxy. A galaxy is a giant system of more than 200 billion stars. Around its large central bulbous region is a thin disk of stars. From our vantage point inside the disk, it appears as a band of faint light that circles the celestial sphere. The Milky Way is brightest in the summer sky when we look towards the galaxy's center. The Milky Way is composed of stars too faint to be seen by our unaided eyes, but their combined light creates the fuzzy belt that circles our sky. Dust and cold gas between the stars obscure the more distant starlight. These clouds and compact regions of many stars produce its mottled appearance. This is what we see overhead at midnight in autumn. The Milky Way arcs overhead from the west to the eastern horizon. The Milky Way continues into the winter sky, but there it is very faint and barely visible from even dark observing sites. This is the direction away from the galaxy's center. However, the winter sky does have many relatively nearby bright stars. There are only a few bright stars on a spring evening, and from the city, only a handful are visible. The Milky Way is far below our southern horizon. Looking high in the spring sky to the left of Leo, we are looking directly out of our galaxy and toward large, remote clusters of other galaxies. Their light has taken 60 million years to reach us. All of these are too faint to be seen without binoculars or a telescope. In our tour, the location of most constellations will be labeled. However, we will point out only the more prominent ones. The mythologies of the constellations are quite entertaining. However, we don't have enough time in this program to tell all their tales. To begin the tour of the celestial sphere, we will look towards the north. The rotation of the Earth causes the stars to revolve counterclockwise around the north celestial pole. Some stars are close enough to the pole that they never set below the horizon. We can observe these at any time of the year, however, they're best seen higher in the sky, where the haze in our atmosphere does not dim their light. If we were closer to the Earth's equator, the north celestial pole would be lower in our sky, closer to the horizon, and there would be fewer of these circumpolar stars. The star Polaris is very close to the pole and is visible on any clear night, so it may be used to help us find the direction north. Polaris is not a very bright star, so to help us find it, we make use of the two pointer stars of the Big Dipper. We use the distance between the end stars of the Dipper's pan. Polaris is about 5 times this distance above them. Polaris is also the star at the end of the handle of the Little Dipper, though it looks more like a ladle. This asterism is quite faint and may be a challenge to see from the city. The Big and Little Dippers are not constellations. They're just convenient, recognizable shapes called asterisms. The corresponding official constellations are Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, Latin for the Big Bear and the Little Bear. Recognizing the patterns of the constellations may require considerable imagination, so don't be surprised if they're difficult to make out. Although Ursa Minor is about the same size as the Little Dipper, Ursa Major is much larger. Here we see the Big Dipper, or Ursa Major, as it appears just after dinner in the first week of February. The Big Bear is climbing the sky in the northeast. The Dipper portion is only the bear's hindquarters. His head is above the top of the frame and his legs extend to the right and upward. The W asterism is the constellation Cassiopeia the Queen. When the Big Dipper is either too high or too low in the sky, we can use it to find Polaris. Here we see it during the evening at the end of May. Above Cassiopeia and leading her around the pole is the much fainter constellation of Cepheus, the King. These stars resemble a child's sketch of a house. The star at the top of the roof marks the King's head. Following Cepheus and Cassiopeia around the north celestial pole is the constellation Perseus. Here we see Perseus rising in the northeast as it does in the evenings during October. The Milky Way crosses the sky from the southwest overhead and into the northeast through Cassiopeia and Perseus. Looking further from the pole gives us a better feeling for the apparent rotation of the celestial sphere. If we're patient, we can see most of the sky in one night. As the celestial sphere rotates, the stars on the left, near the northeastern horizon, will pass overhead in the middle of the night. But our southern horizon will limit how much of the sky we can see. Some stars in the southern celestial hemisphere will never rise for us. Traveling south towards the Earth's equator allows us to see stars that would not be visible from our northern observing site. Here, from slightly north of the equator, stars that appeared low in our sky at home are higher above the southern horizon, and more southern stars are visible. South of the equator, the stars revolve around the south celestial pole. It's above the observatory dome. Unlike the northern pole, there are no bright stars to mark its position. We continue our tour watching the stars rise above the eastern horizon. The north celestial pole is out of the frame beyond the top left corner. This is how the eastern sky looks on mid-December evenings with the stars of winter rising. Orion the Hunter, slightly right of center, is the most prominent constellation of the winter sky. A constellation is different from an asterism. Constellations represent mythological figures, heroes, heroines, symbols of great deeds of valor, monsters, and machines. A set of 88 officially recognized constellations completely covers the sky. Many constellations are composed of faint stars forming random patterns. The brightest stars help us delineate their form, but many still require our imagination. To make out the figure of Orion doesn't require much imagination. The two bright stars marking his right and left shoulders are Betelgeuse and Bellatrix. His right and left knees are the stars Saiph and Rigel. 3 stars of his belt are, from left to right, Al-Natak, Al-Nalam, and Mintaka. The line of stars from Betelgeuse and up to the left forms his sword, carried by his raised right arm. The faint line of stars from Bellatrix is his left arm, with which he holds a shield. It seems to protect Orion from the charge of Taurus, the bull. That's up and to his right. The bright ruddy star Aldebaran is the bull's eye. The V formation of stars is the face of the bull. Left of Orion, or towards the northeast, is Gemini. 2 bright stars mark the heads of the Gemini twins, Castor above and Pollux below. Their legs stretch out towards the head of Orion. Above Gemini, or to the northwest, is Auriga, the chariot driver. It looks like a loop of stars with the bright star Capella on its northern rim. The 3 faint stars to the right of Capella represent 3 goats, a mother and her 2 kids. They may represent goats that kept the horses company in their stable. Leo the lion symbolizes the spring sky because it's prominent high in the sky during early spring evenings. It follows the bright stars of Castor and Pollux across the sky. Here we see it just as it rises during the late evening at the beginning of February. The line of stars shaped like a sickle represents its head and mane of hair. The bright star at the base of the sickle is Regulus. The trailing triangle of stars is the lion's hindquarters. Between Leo and Gemini, in the upper right, is the faint but well-known constellation of Cancer the Crab. At the center of Cancer is a small square made up of 4 faint stars. It's difficult to see them from urban areas, but between these stars is the hazy glow of a star cluster. More about it later. We let the celestial sphere rotate farther to the west. This is early in the evening in the middle of March. We see the bright star Arcturus rising in the east. It is in the center of Boötes, the herdsman. The loop of faint stars north of Arcturus is sometimes referred to as the tennis racket or the ice cream cone. The small arc of stars east of Boötes is Corona Borealis. The stars resemble a diamond-studded tiara. Farther east is Hercules, centered on a keystone marked by 4 stars. The constellation commemorates the strong man of Greek mythology. In late April at midnight, Arcturus is high in the sky and the stars of summer are seen rising above the eastern horizon. The brightest stars that dominate this area form an asterism, the summer triangle. After midnight in mid-July, they will be overhead, or if you don't want to stay up that late, they will be overhead just after dinner time in the beginning of October. This slow annual shift to the west is caused by the orbit of the Earth around the Sun. The 3 stars at the points of the triangle are Deneb, Vega, and Altair. These are the brightest stars of the constellations Cygnus, Lyra, and Aquila. Cygnus is at the eastern point of the triangle, Lyra is at the top or western point, and Altair is at the southern point. Cygnus is a swan, with Deneb representing its tail feathers and the faint star Alberio marking its beak in the center of the triangle. In Greek mythology, Lyra was a string instrument invented by Hermes, and Aquila the eagle was the bird which carried thunderbolts for Zeus. To the east of the summer triangle is a small, faint constellation, Delphinus the dolphin. According to mythology, it commemorates the relationship that developed between humans and dolphins. During late summer evenings, the eastern sky is dominated by the Great Square of Pegasus. It will be overhead in the evening during autumn. Here we see it balanced on its southeastern star, Algenib. Pegasus is the mythical flying horse. The horse is viewed here upside down, with its nose at the star called Enif and its front legs reaching upward. Although its stars are not very bright, the simple square is easy to recognize and remember. Off the tail of Pegasus towards the northeast is the constellation of Andromeda the Princess. Her head is at the star Alpheus, which is shared with the Great Square. Her curved body extends northeast from Alpheus towards the constellations Perseus and Cassiopeia off to the left. In mythology, Cassiopeia was a vain queen who boasted of her beauty. This angered the gods, who then brought disaster upon the kingdom as punishment. Her husband, King Cepheus, ordered their daughter Princess Andromeda to be sacrificed to Cetus the whale to appease the gods. Andromeda was chained to the shore, where her cries for help were heard by the hero Perseus. He was returning home from slaying the Gorgon Medusa. He carried Medusa's severed head in a sack. Medusa's head was so ugly that anyone who looked upon it was turned to stone. After ensuring that Andromeda did not look, Perseus held up the head for Cetus to see, and the monster was petrified. Perseus freed Andromeda and bore her to safety on the back of the winged horse, Pegasus. As we resume the rotation of the celestial sphere, we watch it complete one revolution. It now returns to Orion, where we started. As we look towards the right, we will see more southern constellations. In the middle of January, this would be our southern view of the celestial sphere during the late evening, with Orion high in the sky. Below Orion is the faint constellation of Lepus the Hare, and up and to the left of Orion is Canis Minor, the little dog, with its bright star Procyon. Southeast of Orion is Canis Major, the big dog. Its brightest star, Sirius, shines like a brilliant jewel on the dog's collar. It's the brightest star in the nighttime sky. Further east of Orion and south of Cancer and Leo is the long constellation of Hydra, a multi-headed mythical monster that was slain by Hercules as one of his 12 labors. This is how it looks in the evening at the beginning of April. Hydra's most distinguishing group of stars are those that form its head, but they are on the threshold of visibility for most city dwellers. From the head, it extends southeast, past the star Alphard and below our southern horizon. On the left, or to the east, is Corvus, a small constellation representing the crow that was sent by Apollo to fetch water with a cup. This cup is represented by another faint constellation called Crater, immediately to the right. The crow claimed to have been prevented from getting the water by Hydra. Not believing the tale, Apollo set all three among the stars. Northeast of Crater and Corvus is Virgo, representing the fertility of spring. Her stars are well placed for observing during the evening in the middle of May. She holds a bundle of grain in her left hand, represented by the star Spica. Further to the east is the faint constellation of Libra, the Balance. There are few bright stars in this area. From a city, we can see only the star Spica. Stars representing the spring sky cross over to the western horizon, and the stars of summer rise in the southeast. Low in the south, the brightest star is Antares. Its light has taken 550 years to reach us. The mythology of Scorpius tells us that it poisoned Orion. It then died under his foot. Scorpius, as a summer constellation, is never visible in the sky at the same time as Orion. To the east of Scorpius is one of the wonders of the celestial sphere, the Milky Way. From a dark sight, it's an awesome spectacle. It's seen here as it appears in the evenings of mid-August. To the left is the constellation Sagittarius. It represents a mythical centaur, half man and half beast. Its more popular name is the asterism, the teapot or kettle. The light of the Milky Way appears to rise like celestial steam from its spout. Northeast of the teapot is the small asterism of the spoon. Perhaps it can be used to add celestial tea leaves to the celestial teapot. East of Sagittarius is the constellation of Capricornus, seen here in the evening during the last half of October. It represents a legendary creature with a goat for an upper body and a fish-like lower half. The corresponding asterism is a large, blunt arrowhead pointing down to the horizon. East of Capricornus are 4 constellations that continue the water theme: Aquarius, Pisces, Pisces Austrinus, and Cetus. They're well placed for viewing in the late evening during October, or you can wait to see them in the beginning of January, just after dinner. This area of sky south of Pegasus seems barren when viewed from a city. Indeed, there are few bright stars. The brightest in this area is called Fomalhaut in the constellation of Pisces Austrinus. North of Fomalhaut is Aquarius, the water bearer. In Greek mythology, Aquarius represents Ganymede, whose duty was to pour wine for the gods. His cup is represented by the asterism of 4 stars that form a 3-pointed star. It's in the middle of the frame, near the top. Northeast of Aquarius is Pisces. It consists of 2 loops of faint stars representing fish. They're connected by a line of equally faint stars. One fish is above our field of view under Andromeda. The 3rd constellation is Cetus the whale, east of Pisces. It was to devour Princess Andromeda until Perseus saved her. Cetus is on the western shore of the constellation Eridanus, the river. It meanders its way southwest of Orion. Composed of very faint stars, it flows well below our southern horizon, but it brings us back to Orion and our view of the sky on the evenings of mid-February. The sky we see today has the same stars that were observed by our ancient civilizations, and the mythologies of antiquity are still remembered in the form of the constellations.
On a cold wintry night, I have followed Orion's unceasing westward march, placed by the gods in the heavenly vault, never to behold his slayer, the Scorpion. The ruler of winter, in stellar splendor unmatched, Orion inspires our celestial musings. Slipping into evening's twilight, he seeks the sun's warming fire and promises the coming of spring.
Now let's find out how much we can remember about the constellations by turning to the western horizon. We will see the constellations again, but this time they will set below the horizon to the west. The north celestial pole is out of the field of view to the upper right. The stars will enter the frame from the upper left and then set below the tree line. We won't use any graphics, you're on your own. We start with Leo the Lion as it appears in the early summer after twilight fades into night. There are celestial objects among the stars. They are so remote their light has taken from a century to millions of years to reach us. All that remains for us to see without the use of a telescope are faint, fuzzy patches of light in the night sky. These are deep sky objects. Though difficult to see, binoculars bring some of them within visible reach from even suburban observing sites. In addition to our Milky Way, there are two other kinds of objects in the sky that can be seen from a dark site or with binoculars from the suburbs. One kind of deep sky object is composed of glowing gases called a nebula. Another kind is a grouping of many stars called a star cluster. One of the brightest nebulae in our sky is in Orion, 1,600 light-years away. It seems to hang from his belt of 3 stars. In the center of what appears to be a scabbard for his sword is the Great Orion Nebula. To the unaided eye from a dark site, it appears as a faint star surrounded by a hazy patch of light. Through binoculars, the nebula is larger, more prominent, and surrounds a small cluster of stars. They formed several million years ago from gases of the nebula. Photographs show it as a large, bright object. Visually, it is more difficult to see. The faint and subtle details of the nebula are best seen through a telescope or in long-exposure photographs. At the foot of Castor, one of the Gemini twins, is a relatively large star cluster located along the plane of the Milky Way Galaxy, 2,800 light-years away. To our unaided eye, it appears like a slightly fuzzy, faint star. The extra light-gathering power of binoculars helps us to pick out the brighter stars and to see many fainter members. It lies along the plane of the Milky Way, so through binoculars, the cluster appears to be accompanied by a rich star field. In the heart of Cancer the Crab is another star cluster well suited to binoculars. It's called the Persepi cluster. Some people call it the Beehive cluster. To our eyes from a dark site, we see a glowing patch of sky nested between the 4 guardian stars in the center of Cancer. Through binoculars, the 4 guardian stars frame the field of view, and we're able to make out many individual stars. This cluster is only 580 light-years from us. These open clusters are some of the easiest deep sky objects to find with binoculars. Most appear as hazy patches. Few of them will be resolved into stars without the help of binoculars. The next step in our tour is in the late spring sky, the Hercules cluster. It's fainter than the others. It appears as a faint star on the west side of the keystone of Hercules. With binoculars, it becomes much easier to see, but we still don't see stars. This object is about 8 times farther away than the Gemini cluster. We'll need a telescope to see even its brightest stars. This cluster has over 1 million members, but their light has taken over 23,000 years to reach us. At such a great distance, only its most luminous stars are visible. It's different from the Gemini cluster. This is called a globular cluster. These types of star clusters are much older than the open clusters, such as those in Gemini and Cancer. From a dark observing site, many can be seen with a pair of binoculars, but from a city, our list of visible objects is quite short. In the late summer, a faint but important object is well placed for observing in the evening. A bit northwest of the line of stars that form the body of Andromeda is one of the most distant objects visible without binoculars, the Great Andromeda Galaxy. This is how our galaxy would appear from a remote vantage point outside the Milky Way. The light, dimmed by distance, has traveled through the void of space for over 2.2 million years. It's almost impossible to see from a light-polluted city without some kind of optical aid. Northeast of Andromeda is an interesting set of objects, 2 star clusters within 1 binocular field. The pair is located between Perseus and Cassiopeia and is appropriately named the double cluster. They lie along the plane of the Milky Way between 7,000 and 8,000 light-years from us. There are a lot of other stars along our line of sight, yet we can easily make out the clusters amid the Milky Way's rich field of stars. The star Algol represents the severed head of Medusa. It's also called the demon star because it varies in brightness over about 10 hours every 3 days. As we come almost full circle, there are 2 more clusters on our tour. Even though they don't seem to lie along the Milky Way, they are in it. It's just that they're relatively close to us. The face of Taurus the Bull is a loose cluster of stars called the Hyades. The light from these stars has traveled through space for only 150 years to reach us. So compared with the other objects we've seen, these stars are really our close neighbors. The Hyades is so large in our sky that it fills the field of view of binoculars. The Bull's right eye, the bright star Aldebaran, is an isolated star about half the distance and doesn't belong to the cluster. The next cluster is west of the Hyades at the end of the Bull's tail. It's the Pleiades star cluster, also called the Seven Sisters. It's a good test for your eyesight. If you have good eyes, you'll see 7 stars. Average eyes see 5 or 6. The true size of the Pleiades cluster is only slightly smaller than the Hyades. The Hyades is about 3 times the apparent size of the Pleiades, but the Pleiades is about 2.5 times farther away. Through binoculars, it resembles a tiny dipper, but we should not confuse it with the other 2 larger dippers in our northern sky. Many non-stellar objects are visible through binoculars, but most are too faint to be seen without a telescope. There are a few relatively bright ones. The Orion Nebula is a good example. Towards the south in the summer sky and above Sagittarius is another particularly bright object. In a plume of celestial steam rising from the spout of the teapot is the brightest nebula in this part of the summer sky. It's called the Lagoon Nebula, but even with binoculars, it's almost impossible to understand the origin of its name. Only with a telescope can we begin to appreciate the intricate marriage between a young star cluster and the remnant of the nebula from which it was born. What we have seen so far can be viewed on a clear, dark night. However, there are other more fleeting objects not part of the celestial sphere. They drift across it. These are the comets. Twice they have graced our skies in the late 1990s. Hyakutaki's comet came so close to the Earth in 1996 that its motion was clearly visible during a single night as it drifted by our North Star. The following year, comet Hale-Bopp crossed our sky. It was physically larger but farther away. The comet's apparent motion with respect to the stars was much slower, but it too left a lasting impression on those who observed it. The tails of comets are composed of fine particles of dust and glowing gases. If the Earth drifts through this debris, the high speed of collision causes the particles of ice and dust to vaporize about 100 kilometers up. These leave streaks of light called meteors, and the resulting display is called a meteor shower. The meteors seem to radiate from a small area of the sky, and the shower is named after the constellation from which they radiate. This is an example of the Geminid meteor shower. The meteors seem to radiate from a point near the star Castor. The number of meteors during a shower varies from year to year, but some showers yield from 50 to 100 meteors per hour. If the Earth passes through a particularly dense region of dust, we may experience a meteor storm. Although very rare, they can be spectacular. Some of the larger particles of planetary debris may explode as a fireball. Another relatively local phenomenon occurring in our atmosphere is the Aurora Borealis, or northern lights. It may begin as a subtle glowing arc low in the north. The arc can develop vertical rays that may extend high in the sky. An aurora is generated by gases from our sun that have been explosively ejected towards the Earth. Deflected by the Earth's magnetic field, they induce electric currents that excite the gases in our atmosphere to glow. The aurora can appear to move. The rays can shift and combine into curtains that seem to wave across our northern sky. There is one more celestial spectacle to be included in the wonders of the sky, a solar eclipse. It occurs when our moon orbits the Earth directly in front of the sun. On these rare occasions, it may block all the sun's brilliant light, allowing us to safely view its extended atmosphere, the beautiful solar corona. The delicate structure is caused by the sun's gases, heated to millions of degrees and shaped by the sun's magnetic field. The complex forces ensure that no two eclipses are alike and keep eclipse chasers planning for the next time, when they may again stand in the shadow of our moon. The celestial sphere is a natural wonder that few people can see because of the increasing indiscriminate use of outdoor lighting that shines up into the night sky. The night sky was enjoyed by past generations. They took it for granted, but we cannot. Today, many adults have never seen a star-filled sky, and most of our children may never see the sky free of light pollution. We should ask why we should pay to light up the sky with artificial lights when nature does such a fine job for free.
On this cold and star-filled night, I have seen Orion rise and set before my eyes. I have held the crescent moon in the palm of my hand and washed my face in the cosmic glow of wonderland. Here I am alone, and beneath this dark sky of stars, I ponder.
Bye.